Okay, hello and welcome to the weekly Tuesday afternoon live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar. Normally, Angie Atkinson is with me on these live streams. However, we decided we decided last night that we were not going to do one today, but then I forgot because of the holidays, but then I forgot that to let you guys know. So I thought I should just go ahead and do one. So I'm here. So, yes. So, for those of you that are here today, welcome. For those of you that are returning, welcome. If you are new to these live streams, this is something that Angie and I normally try to do every Tuesday, and you can be notified of when we go live. You can text Dana Live, all one word, to the number 22999. And I believe you can get notified when Angie goes live by texting Angie Live to the number 33222, I believe. I hope I have that right. I need to write that down. So, yes, welcome. Peter Patar is here. Welcome. How is everybody doing? Is everybody all ready for the holidays? And if so, what are your plans? It's a modified Christmas this year, or I guess holiday season in general for people this year. Peter says, I remember your first live stream here about 4 years ago. Yeah, it was about that 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a while, which seems like forever on the internet. Oh, Jack says, oh, just a second. Huffle Mom will have that information. Yes, you guys are on it. I really appreciate what would I do without Jack and Huffle Mom? My goodness. Grace is here and says, Merry Christmas. Anybody thinking about kind of the next year, 2021, and New Year's resolutions or goals or ideas, or uh, kind of what you're hoping for in this new year? Michelle is here, says hello, everyone. I wasn't planning on talking about this today, but I guess it's somewhat relevant. Um, one of the exercises that I find really helpful to do, especially at the end of the new year or at the end of the old year, is to think about one thing that I'd like to leave behind one thing I'd like to leave behind in 2020, and one thing that I'd like to bring forward into 2021. And I believe, gosh, it's been a whirlwind past couple of years. I want to say it was 2019. I had decided um, one of the things I was going to leave behind was, uh, I think, disorganization. And then one of the things that I was going to bring forward was making my mental health a top priority. And thinking about it in those terms, as far as like one thing we're going to leave behind, and then one thing we're going to bring forward, it can be a very simple way to make some pretty profound changes in our lives. Michelle says, resolution, working on getting rid of things I don't use much. That's a good one. That is such a great feeling to just declutter and have the things that we're using in this chapter in our life. Jack says, I hope Christmas will be much like Thanksgiving, that the quarantine will keep toxic family at bay. Yes. Well, it's definitely kind of a built-in excuse, isn't it? To kind of not get together with people. Grace says, my mom passed a few months back. I'm sorry to hear that, Grace. Dad moved a new girlfriend in and doesn't want to do Christmas. Sisters don't want to do Christmas, just me and my kiddos this year. Well, I hope that you and your kids have a lovely holiday together. Oh, Jack asks, Say, Dana, where's Angie?" uh, well, you see, we had decided last night, to not do a live stream today because of all of the busyness of, last minute holiday stuff. And then I realized I didn't make an announcement letting people know. So I thought, well, I'm just gonna, I should go on live because I didn't say anything to my group. And I'm really trying to get better about giving people as much notice as possible. Ideally, a good 24 hours notice, unless there's some sort of absolute last minute emergency. So that's, yes. So that's why I'm here. Jack's talking to Pitar and says, I'm glad you're back on the channel and here in the chat. I'm aware much has changed here since 4 years ago. He says, although I haven't been here that long. And Grace says, we miss you, Angie. Yes, we absolutely do. Katarina says, wow, I'm finally in a live stream. I've been following your videos for 3 years now, Dana. Thank you so much. You've helped me so much. I'm doing so much better. That's awesome. That's wonderful to hear. I'm so glad. This might be another video that we could do maybe next week. I don't even know if that's before the new year or not, but kind of discussing some of the big shifts that we've made in our lives. So I guess if you guys are comfortable sharing that now, we could share it in the chat or in the comments down below, or we could discuss it next week, or all of the above. But maybe some big shifts that we've made and ways that we've grown, realizations that we've had. I always think it's so helpful to share those. It's amazing the aha moments one person has, no matter how small, can be so profound for somebody else. So I think there's a lot of great synergy at play when that happens. Huffle Mom asks, hey, hi, when shall I post the usual reminders? You could go for it now. I'll go ahead and mention it again for people that are new here. If you're wanting to be notified whenever I go live, you can text Dana Live, all one word, to the number 22999. I need to write that down. 22999, and you will get texts from me. Yes. So Grace says, hey, pretty new background, Dana. Thanks. Yeah, it's a work in progress. This piece of artwork is a work in progress. You will be seeing that uh, slowly but surely filling in here over the next, I don't know, week or so, however long it takes me. I'm experimenting with some different techniques, although I don't know how experimental I necessarily want to get with this piece. Or in this space where I am right now, we don't have a lot of room to move around, and um, yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. Nuxie says, "Hi Dana, love the notifications. Very cool. Yeah, isn't technology awesome? It's so helpful. I know there's some people here too that um, for them, the notification or the live streams happen in the middle of the night, and some people set an alarm to be here. So I definitely, want to be respectful of their time, and yeah, give as much notice as I can, one way or the other. Michelle is talking about one of her shifts and says, big shift from denial to acceptance, to break up to divorce to single, and enjoying it. This has been a rough year, but so much growth. Wow, it sounds like you really have had an absolutely wild year, but I'm thrilled for you that you're at this place where um, that you can kind of take a break from the chaos of the storm and reflect and see how much growth there really has been. So anyone else, would anybody else like to share some insights or aha moments? Or I think I'll share some of mine while people are joining us. One of mine has been the, well, I guess with pandemic stuff, um, the kind of taking time on a regular basis for me to connect with friends and family. I, if it's one of those things for me, like if it's not right in front of my face, things slip my mind very easily. And so I getting to the point where I'm reserving Sundays, as that's kind of my day as a catch up day, to just connect with people that are significant to me. And um, that's done wonders for my mental health. Oh, well, you're welcome. Michelle says, your wisdom and insight in this group has helped me so much. Well, I'm so, so glad that that is the case. Speaking of groups, I know I've said this before and I apologize. I did not realize it was going to be such a massive undertaking. We used to have a forum on my website, and it was one issue after another with that. I've been trying to figure out how to go about replacing that. I think I have a solution for it. So I'm hoping that, let's say, middle of January, that we'll have something in place. So for those of you that are not a big fan of using Facebook because it's just too interconnected, um, I am trying to work out something. It's not as simple as I was thinking it would be. I don't know why I would ever think it would be simple, because nothing with me in technology ever is. So um, let's see. I guess I'll share another insight I've had this past year has really been paying attention to um, paying attention to uncomfortable emotions when they're on like that mild end of the spectrum. So when there's just mild frustration, mild irritation, seeing that they're there, that those feelings tend to be there for a reason. And it tends to be because either um, there's generally a boundary cross that's gone on, and the solution to that tends to be that I need to do something different in order to get those boundaries back in place. So it's amazing, kind of this people pleasing behavior, this knee jerk reaction to say yes and to sign up for things, and to and how we can still struggle with this, I guess is what I'm saying. And I've gotten so much better over the years, but it's still there to some degree. And so paying attention to it when it's on just beginning, and oftentimes in ways where the other person may not even realize or intend to cross the boundary, to just kind of make my boundary known. So yeah. So I guess what that really is it's truly connecting my emotions to environment and doing some reflection and seeing kind of what that's about and what's going on. Nuxie says, ugh, yes, I constantly find myself in this situation, especially with my family. Yes. Yes, I have found myself in this situation across the board. And sometimes it's me, sometimes it's just thinking, I have a weird relationship with time anyhow. Like I tend to really overestimate or underestimate how long things take me. But kind of just not realizing that, saying yes and not realizing the time commitment that I'm signing up for with something, or just the effects that it's going to have, even in a small way. Like the other day, Paul made a comment, something like, hey, can I just have, just 10 more minutes, just 10 more minutes, or I forget even what it was about. Like, I need you to ask you this for about 10 more minutes. And the old me would have said, okay. I know he was well intended. I know he wanted to, we were working on something, but with the new me with better boundaries was like, no, I really don't have time. I've got to go do this other thing. And I had to go. And he understood, but I guess the takeaway there is it's truly up to me it's up to each and every one of us to guard our time, our energy, our emotions, every aspect of ourself, and to not put that on other people. So, uh, and again, like that was a very minor, and well-intended, the benign kind of boundary push on his end, but still, like it was, I had something I had to go do, and the clock was ticking, and I was getting stressed out. So yeah. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Helpful Mom, thanks for bringing that up. She says, before you leave the chat today, please be sure to click or tap the thumbs up beneath the screen. This helps feed the algorithm, which makes Dana's channel more visible. I appreciate that. And I want to add to that. Um, it'd be, yes, please let me know in general what you think of these videos. If you want to see more of this, thumbs up. If you'd like things to change, thumbs down. And please leave a comment down below on like what you'd like to see different. So I'm not overly concerned about getting a bunch of thumbs up. I'd rather have sincere feedback. So yeah, just let me know what you think. Um, Katarina says, I've been dating a guy for a few months now. I think he's a really great guy. I'm really learning to receive because I'm coming from the codependent corner. He also used to be more on the codependent corner. Do you think that this might work? We are really mirroring each other and are both very self-aware. Yes, absolutely. The big game changer with, I think, relationships in general, or especially issues that surface in relationships, is it's awareness that there's a problem, for one, and two, the emotional maturity of both people involved, and then three, the effective communication. So those are all very, very needed. There is no such thing as a perfect person or a perfect relationship. The good news is there doesn't have to be. If we're aware that there's something that needs some balance or something that needs our attention, that's a huge step. Kind of like just what I was saying before, when we're not aware that something is actually a problem, when we're in denial of it, basically, where we tend to minimize it, we deny it, we justify it, we rationalize, we do all kinds of things to try to think that it's okay. Or we take an inappropriate level of accountability for making things balanced or okay in the relationship. And when we're aware, when we start to really step into boundaries, standards, and deal breakers, and what appropriate accountability looks like, and um, have that level of awareness, and then have that level of emotional maturity where we can talk about things and we're not so focused on expecting the other person to make us feel a certain way, like, oh, I need you to always um, be mindful of my boundaries at all times, which the reality is that's not reality, because people are going to step over them sometimes. Hopefully more often than not it'll be unintentional. Just like I was giving the example the other day with me and Paul, he wanted me to do something for 10 more minutes, and it's like, I just can't. If we let little things like that slide, and we're continually giving in, but we're having to have the consequences of that, that's when resentment starts to build up. So that emotional maturity helps tremendously, and it helps to balance out the relationship, which is huge. The challenge with two people that have a history of being people pleasers and being kind of quote unquote over givers is, it's when you're in a relationship with somebody like that, um, where you both are that way, it's going to be a new way of doing things. So there's going to it's there's going to be times where it's uncomfortable, and it's going to bring a lot of things to the surface, and this is where effective communication really comes into play, with being able to be honest about, oh wow, you know what, I said yes, I really should have said no to that. Or um, I think our boundaries in this area as a couple maybe need some work, with regards to friends or work or family or whatnot. Or um, um, and seeing kind of, okay, what needs is that people pleasing behavior meeting? Because sometimes it can be out of, if a person's coming from a very controlling family, that people pleasing behavior can just be to keep the peace at home. But then sometimes it can also be, uh, because we don't like conflict. It can, which is kind of the same thing. Or it can be that that's our way of getting our self-esteem needs met. So if we're over giving to the other person, like, oh, I through, maybe oftentimes through acts of service, right? So I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm doing all of these things, and really deep down, it's like we're needing that continual validation or reassurance, because that's how we give and receive love. That can cause problems when you've got two people that give and receive love in that same way. Then it can kind of turn into this weird competitive thing and resentment and all that. Of course, every relationship is different, so it's noticing how that codependency, um, is surfacing in your relationship, and thinking about it in terms of imbalance. When are these imbalances present, and how do you know when they're present? And perhaps even more importantly, how do you know when they're resolved? And I'll tell you what we were talking about earlier, paying attention or noticing your emotional environment of when you feel kind of cool, calm, collected, that tends to be that tends to go hand in hand with having a balance there. It's when those feelings of frustration, irritation, resentment, um, anger, these kinds of things, those tend to be pretty significant pointers that something's out of balance and something needs some attention. So yeah, communication is just everything. And the willingness and the ability to have that growth mindset. That's kind of the upside to other people. This is why, there's no such thing as a perfect person, but there can be a lot of benefit to meeting other people along this path that are doing a lot of personal growth work, because they value it and they realize that this is necessary for a relationship to grow. So, okay, let's see that. Let me scroll here. Mm, very well said. Critical mass says, once a seed of bitterness has sprouted and taken root, it's very difficult to get rid of it. Yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And this is a boundary thing too, because if we're not aware of what's going on, if this is just the role that we've played of, okay, I'm just the overgiver, and we're mistaking that level of overgiving as, oh, I'm just a kind, caring, compassionate person. And we're not realizing actually that that might be true, but with that, to such an extreme, comes damaged boundaries. And with damaged boundaries comes all kinds of anxiety, depression, resentment, frustration. It's a slow poison to a relationship. And if we're kind of doing this subconsciously, then that bitterness may be directed at the other person of, well, you should just know. We're expecting them to read our mind. You should just know, look how much I do for you, right? So that then you should therefore do things for me. But that's not cool, right? That's giving with strings attached. And that causes its own level of frustration and resentment. So and this kind of goes back to that assigning appropriate accountability. of realizing, okay, I am accountable for my behavior. Other people are accountable for theirs. If I'm going to give to somebody, it really needs to be within the context of healthy boundaries for me, and within the context of healthy boundaries for them, so we don't get this enmeshed imbalance at play where you've got one person, overgiving and over taking care of somebody else who's perfectly capable of it. And um, yeah, just kind of keeping that balance. So being aware of it, and then when we're able to do that, that bitterness, we're able to own that bitterness of as well, of, man, I'm feeling really hurt. Here I am giving and giving and giving, and I'm not getting anything in return. That can be a very clear sign of, okay, I'm giving with strings attached, and that's a problem. Like, that's its own level of inappropriate expectations and kind of damaged boundaries at play. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll. Um, yeah, that's a good kind of segue, Jack. He's mentioning in the chat the uh, victim, perpetrator, rescuer roles, and that's known as the drama triangle. And if you ever want a quick way to kind of check yourself to see if how functional how functional your mindset is, how functional your friendships are, how functional your boundaries are, your uh, communication is, all of that. You can check to see, am I in the drama triangle? And the drama triangle is exactly that. It's a triangle. So there's three sides, and you have victim, persecutor, rescuer. And when a person's in that drama triangle, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle, it's hard, it can be difficult to get out of it. And so as a result, the roles, the person, everybody in it is just going to keep spinning around and around, rotating roles in that. So the victim tends to become the persecutor. The persecutor might take a turn at being the rescuer. The rescuer might become the victim, and so on. And you see this a lot with dysfunctional relationships, dysfunctional families, all of that. So the drama triangle only ever yields crazy making. That's all it does. The only way out of the drama triangle is through really appropriate accountability and responsibility and assertive communication. So a big reason the drama triangle is so difficult to get out of is if a person doesn't have a healthy understanding of what functional or healthy boundaries are, then those boundaries are so blurred. Also, if they don't have a healthy understanding of their own power and control, their own ability to affect change in their life, they tend to get stuck in it. So, for example, if a person is in, um, and I would say especially continually in the victim role, it's that feeling of life is happening to me. Other people just walk over my boundaries. I just attract narcissists right and left. Um, why? Kind of why God, why? Kind of a thing. And and that's a very difficult place to be in. And when a person is in that victim role, and this is not to minimize or to blame at all, but when a person is especially continually in that victim role, it tends to be they don't realize that they're living life through kind of this wounded child perspective of feeling powerless and looking to other people to always be good to them and to meet their wants and needs and all of these things. So instead of realizing, okay, no, you're you're an adult now, and you have power, you have control, you have the ability to say yes, and you have the ability to say no. You have the right to your own wants and needs and thoughts and feelings and opinions. And it's healthy and appropriate to have those boundaries, standards, and deal breakers. Like, you have a lot of ability to steer the ship, kind of a thing. You are the captain of your own ship. And that's very eye-opening for a lot of people. And of course, their life begins to that ship starts to turn around and gets out of that drama triangle once they realize that, of, oh, I just didn't realize that. And we tend to get stuck in that victim role or even in the drama triangle to begin with, when we're internalizing all of these dysfunctional messages from our families, from friends, from music, media, society as a whole, you name it. And these messages are really, they're pervasive, and they tend to come across as good advice, which is, or just the way things are, which is why I think that, they can be so damaging. So being, breaking free from that is a process, and truly understanding how much, um, that as an individual, you have, these are kind of your inherent rights as a person. So you have the right to your own wants and needs and thoughts and feelings and opinions and all of this. So yeah. And then I guess I'll talk a little bit about, so when we're playing the rescuer role, this is that blurred boundary of the feeling of, I need to fix other people, or I'm somehow responsible for other people's decisions, other people's feelings, other people's lives, you name it. And that rescuer tends to always be interjecting themselves, giving unwanted advice, jumping in to help when maybe help isn't wanted. Or it, a twist to this, which I think we've all seen, is I'll give the rescuers, like, I'll give you the help and advice you want, but it comes with strings attached. Jack and Hufflemom, I think you guys just recently experienced this, the family member. So, it just gets all kinds of tangled up. Um, the abuser, their boundary violation is that they tend to have none. So they tend to really have boundaryless behavior. They have a very skewed idea of, they feel entitled. They feel entitled they're very emotion driven. And so it's this feeling of, if I'm frustrated, if I'm angry, if I'm feeling any which way, Paul, Paul, if I'm feeling any such way, then it's reasonable and appropriate to lash out at other people. And so that's a huge sign of emotional immaturity, and that's a problem. So, okay, sorry about that. Amazon, Amazon's here. I hope I didn't scream that right into the microphone. If I did, I apologize profusely. See, Heffel Mom is talking about boundaries and saying, oh, and yes, these people, the boundaryless people, don't believe that you should or have or need to have boundaries either. Yeah, and that relationship tends to be very one-sided, and it's due to that emotional immaturity and that sense of entitlement. So for the abusive person, they they just feel like, hey, I feel this way and I should be, it's all kinds of just tangled up thinking. Well, I should be able to do whatever or say whatever. And if they are thinking of themselves as a nice person, well, yeah, you should do something. You should watch my kids for a week because I loaned you $500 10 years ago. So they're keeping score. There's strings attached, these kinds of things. So there's a lot of guilt and fear and manipulation going on, especially, I think, pretty much all the time with a person with an abusive mentality. Okay, Jack and Huffle says, okay, you didn't scream into the microphone. Okay, that's good. Zelda says, my mother is a whirling drama triangle. Yeah, lots of people are. And it's exhausting. When you have a deeply dysfunctional mindset, especially with narcissists or sociopaths. You see there tends to be this oscillation between victim and abuser. And when if they're very no, I don't want to say unaware. If their behavior is deeply dysfunctional and they're driven by that sense of entitlement, I really do believe that the vast majority of them do feel like the victim when they don't get their way, no matter how outrageous, because they're so emotionally driven that to them their behavior makes sense. I was really mad. Yeah, I pushed him or her, or I, stalked them, or I, drained their bank account, but, but look at what they did to me, kind of a thing. So it's this, um, yeah, very deeply dysfunctional mentality. Lori says, I was in the drama triangle for 40 years. Yeah, this stuff's not taught. And unfortunately, I think that's more common than not, Lori. I forget who said it. Somebody famous, I don't know if it's Mark Twain, somebody said something along the lines of, um, like life begins at 40 and everything before that was just practice. And frankly, I think there's a lot of truth in that, because that tends to be how things go. We're on autopilot, living subconsciously, going through life, and then getting, the more responsibility we have, we kind of step into adulthood, and then we kind of make the best decisions we can at the time, or we fall into certain responsibilities, you know, uh, maybe kind of an unexpected pregnancy, or a job that we never really intended to stay at, but then kind of next thing you know, you've been there for 7 years, and you know what I mean? So sometimes people just kind of, they don't take an active role in creating their life. It sometimes things just happen, and then they tend to start waking up in their late 30s, early 40s, and it's this realization of, oh my gosh, I am in so much pain. My life does not work for me. I'm in the wrong relationship or the wrong career, or I don't have any friends, or I don't like where I live. There's lots of things that are just not working for them across the board. And it's this, and I think for our community, more so than kind of the average person. And then there's this tremendous incentive of, I need to do something different. I cannot do this much longer. Like, I am in so much pain. This relationship or these relationships are slowly sucking the life out of me. And um, the upside to that is, on the other side of an ending is a beginning. And when a person is in so much pain like that, where they're like, you know what, my life needs a major overhaul, they're motivated to take the steps necessary. And so there's kind of just this beautiful, very kind of fleeting time in our life where, especially when everything kind of blows up, yeah, and we're standing among the rubble of our life, and the rubble of these previous decisions, and everything, and we're having to rebuild piece by piece or brick by brick. The benefit of that is that we can consciously then go about choosing which bricks we want to rebuild with, and that's incredibly powerful. Whereas I think a lot of people, I forget who said it, but tend to live kind of these lives of quiet desperation. And I know, frankly, a lot of this, which is so frustrating for me, beyond, like, to the point of tears, because this stuff's not taught. And what a difference it would make if it was, starting in like junior high. So we all do the best we can until, when we know different, we start doing different. And that's all any of us can do. Okay, let's see here. Jack asked, the role victim, rescuer, persecutor. He said it's called the trauma triangle. No, drama, DRAMA, drama triangle. Okay, that's a great question. Grace says, if our love language is acts of service, how do we show love in the first few months without risking being codependent to a sociopath? I think in part, kind of being aware of that um, when a relationship is beginning and for a relationship to work, there really needs to be that sense of mutuality. And every relationship is going to require kind of a different balance of what that mutuality looks like. And when I say mutuality, it's that give and take, that level of reciprocity. So that's where that balance exists. And so when a relationship is new, we're still kind of getting our sea legs with it. We're getting to know the other person. We're getting to know um, kind of what we're creating with that other person, that relationship. And so a lot of times it has to just go with taking things slow and realizing that the beginning stage of all relationships, of all friendships, of all anything new, okay, uh, there's always this kind of fantasy idealization period with anything, things we buy on Amazon, a new outfit, a new friendship, a new job, a new pet, a new child, anything new. There will always be this disconnect between how we think it's going to go and how it's actually going to go. And so realizing that, and the more emotionally invested we are in the outcome, kind of the greater the fantasy that we tend to create, or the more hope we tend to place on the beginning of things, or the more optimistic we tend to be. I'll put it that way. So that can be hard to kind of rein that back and realize that we don't know this other person. And especially when it comes to dating, and especially if a person's been single for a long time or they're feeling emotionally um, vulnerable or starved out, if they recently are going through a divorce. Maybe they haven't been single for a long time. Maybe recently their spouse recently died, or they recently got divorced, something like that. If they're particularly vulnerable, the more vulnerable we are, the greater that level of kind of unbridled optimism that we tend to bring with us to a situation. So it's important to kind of keep that in check, and to what that looks like is kind of pulling those emotions back and realizing, you know, yeah, I'm so excited. I met this new person. They seem so amazing. We seem to have so much in common. And, but you know what though? I'm going to take it slow. I'm not going to put all of my like, emotional eggs in one basket, so to speak. I'm going to just kind of take it slow, and we're going to get to know each other versus running full speed ahead. And so when we do that, then we're able to, because the reality is the relationship doesn't begin until about a good 90 days in, until we start getting settled and until people start getting comfortable with being more real. And when I say being more real, I mean, um, they stop trying to impress, they stop putting their best foot forward. You're seeing them, think about in a job. I think that's the best way to see this, because we all do this. So it's not just sociopaths. Like there is this time where people are pleasant and polite and tend to be agreeable and like putting their best foot forward, and then things settle in. Differences start to surface across the board. Differences in temperament, differences in political views and religion, and you name it. And then the relationship starts to begin when we're able to kind of navigate and negotiate with the other person. And that goes back to that effective communication, that emotional maturity, that desire for personal growth, and that most of all, I think that level of being able to assign appropriate accountability for who owns what in the relationship as far as behavior goes. So, with acts of service, I think it's well, any of the love languages, when we're first meeting somebody, I think it's good to take it slow and to realize whenever we're giving anything, it's helpful to have kind of no strings attached. So if you want to do, if you want to, I don't know, shovel that person's driveway, if you live in a snowy place, or bring them fresh cookies or what have you, those acts in and of themselves don't make a person codependent unless mm, the underlying motive there is to get them to is an attempt to try to get them to like us. That's when that's problematic. If it's just giving, if it's just doing acts of service, just because you're like, hey, I thought you'd appreciate this, or I thought of you, and there's no kind of unhealed, self-esteem or issues with abandonment driving that behavior, go for it. But if you're finding that you're doing these acts of service as a way to kind of earn their love or earn the friendship or keep this person around or avoid abandonment, then that's worth doing a deeper dive into. And frankly, if you do find yourself doing that, at a minimum, I think it's good to kind of take a step back and realize, okay, I need to uh, kind of not. I need to kind of cultivate my social circle. So I'm not so heavily fixated on getting this one person's approval and love, but cultivating these different friendships. So I have that support system there and I'm able to engage with a wide variety of people. So I'm not making this new person so that this new person is the, kind of the candles on the cake because you don't even know them yet. Right now, it's just the candles on the cake. That way, we're not making them the whole cake. We get in trouble when we're very quick to to fall into this emotional fantasy and make this new person the whole cake. And the problem with that is if things don't work out, then we're left starving. And that, just creates vulnerability and is not a good situation to be in. And it doesn't work in the long run anyhow. So okay, let me scroll up here. Um, okay, Monica. It says, I escaped a narcissist who was aggressive to me, and it was today. Okay, he was beating my arms. He made me react to his abuse in front of his family just to make me crazy. I reacted and he told me I'm a sick person and he had a smirk on his face. He's just the devil. And she says, yeah, I just don't have words for that. I just nearly died there. The whole family was not being accountable for his behavior towards me. Well, I guess to start would be um, who is this person? Is this somebody that you're dating? Is this a quote unquote friend? Is this and I guess more importantly, I where kind of what are your thoughts now about how to proceed with this dynamic with this other person? Um, let's see. Let me scroll up here. And I hope that she's still in the chat. She might not be. I'm not sure. Right. That's a great point. UNA says, the whole making others the whole cake, it's unfair to them. It absolutely is. And the result of that tends to be feelings of exhaustion and exasperation and futility from the other person. Because even if they're kind of willing to dance that dance and to give reassurance and love and words of affirmation and these kinds of things, it it can just feel like it's not enough. If you've got another person who's continually trying to get that from outside of themselves, and um that then it can feel like to other people that it's kind of they're pouring their time and attention and affection into a bucket that has holes in it, where it's just not enough. Like we just can need so much reassurance and so much of that. So, and that's just, another imbalance that can be addressed, but awareness of it is a good first step. Um, okay, let me see here. And Nance says, does anyone else have trouble with being socially awkward and maintaining friendships or making friends since trying to heal from their abuse? Yes, from personal experience, yes, absolutely. I would be curious to see what other people have to say about it. You know, just speaking again from my own experience, I needed validation of just confirmation of what I experienced, um, and I had gone through something so traumatic, but nobody else seemed to see it, and so I think that really drove. I was almost incapable for several years there of having any type of kind of casual conversation. It was either a very, very deep dive because I just had all of this unprocessed pain that I didn't know what to do with, and that I yeah. So I just had all of this pain that I needed to discuss, and um, so that can make things awkward for sure, and then it makes it even more awkward if people don't understand what you've gone through and their response is very minimizing or invalidating or re-victimizing. Um, and I had a hard time relating to other people for, um, just other things. It's just difficult when you experience something so traumatic. Uh, and of course, everybody's different, but for me, experiencing something so traumatic, I had a very difficult time shifting gears and relating to people in on a more casual level. So, and then the result of that is I tended to just want to be alone. And that was the way that I kind of self-soothed a lot. I didn't realize that until recently, but I spent it makes me sad. Frankly, I lost years, probably close to a decade of my life, um, kind of isolating because I just felt like, well, nobody understands me. And I can be kind of a loner anyhow. So, but it was to a problematic degree, and I just didn't realize it. So, yeah, I'm a big fan. After the pandemic is handled, I'm a big fan of Meetup.com. It's a wonderful website. It's a great way to get out there and meet people, uh, kind of just through shared interests. So if you're into photography or dog parks or camping or playing chess, you name it, they tend to have groups based around that. People get together, and um, it's good to have, I think, a break, to have a community where you can relate to people on based off of interests, and it keeps your social circle, support circle going. And yeah, so that is a thought. So let me scroll down. Okay, I do not see anything from the gal that was talking about her experience before. And let's see, Monica. So Uh, let's see. And Monica, if you're listening, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think this, so I'm going to try to do this with all of like the kind of care and compassion. So please know that that is my intention. But this situation with this person, um, deeply mistreating you, I can only imagine how frustrating and crazy making and angry and scared and all of the emotions that you're feeling right now are. I think many of us in this group have experienced something similar to that. And it's just absolutely enraging and crazy making. But to take that situation and to put it in the context of the drama triangle that we were talking about earlier. So there's the roles of the victim, the the persecutor or the abuser, and then the rescuer. So when somebody so grossly mistreats us like that, then even though we don't want to play that role, nobody wants to be in the role of victim. It's through these kinds of situations that we find ourselves, boom, in that role. So you didn't ask for it, you didn't cause it, you didn't start it, and this is not something with this other person's behavior that you can fix. Okay, that kind of behavior is never okay. So, you know, him being abusive to you now puts you in the role of victim. And so now it's figuring out, okay, how do I get out of this drama triangle? What kind of actions do I need to take? Yes, his behavior, like I said, wildly inappropriate, deeply disturbing. The fact that his family, nobody saw an issue with it. Nobody, um, they seem to all support him. This just shows that there's a lot of deep dysfunction here. This did not start with you. This will not end with you. And so then it's sort of like, okay, now the ball's in your court. What are you going to do? And for many people that are in the victim role, and again, I've been there too, where it's like, hey, I didn't ask for this. Like, I don't want, like, it's not fair, right? It's not fair that I have to be the one to come up with a solution and to get out of this. But that's the result of when we are kind of ganged up on or stumble into deeply dysfunctional behavior like that, then we have to be the ones to do something about it. We can't wait for them to figure it out or to do the right thing or to have some sort of insight or to discover, religion or rehab or anything else. It has to be on us. We have to be able to value ourselves and to be able to be self-protective. And we do that through boundaries, standards, and deal breakers. So realizing, okay, you know what? He obviously didn't have any problem with his behavior. His family obviously didn't have any problem with it, but it is a problem. And you see that it is a problem. And because you're the only one that sees that that's a problem, and that, well, even still, even if other people saw it a problem, it's still your problem because the abuse was directed towards you. So then it's going to be, okay, um, what is the most kind of um, empowering choices, empowering steps that you can make to get yourself out of that triangle and staying in it, thinking that again, with enough religion or rehab or communication or therapy or whatnot, that eventually he'll change and this whole family dynamic is going to change, and that someday all of these porcupines are going to become kittens, and they're all going to become, cuddly and loving and supportive and the kind of, you know, healthy, well-adjusted people. That is more likely than not going to happen. And to hold on to that fantasy can cause us tremendous amounts of pain, because then we can stick around sitting in this, unknowingly sitting in this drama triangle, thinking that we're doing the right thing, waiting for them, thinking that, well, if I just triple up on my communication, or if I just somehow love him more, if I be more giving, more understanding, more compassionate, more you name it, that'll somehow change this other person. That's that shift from victim, boom, to rescuer. And so now instead of rescuing yourself so much, it's trying to fix this other person. It's trying to rescue them. And and then this is also when you see reactive abuse come into the mix, when that tends that because that doesn't work. That strategy really doesn't work. It might work periodically for the short term, but it doesn't change anybody because change has to come from within. Um, and promises of change and talk of change and short bursts of actions to change are not the same thing as change. The only thing that is actually change, it's sustained changed action that you'll see over time. But um, you see this with reactive abuse. So then the victim, the person who's being abused, they're on the receiving end of this for so long, and then they finally snap, and now boom, they become the abuser, and the abuser is now the victim of them. And that's what's known as reactive abuse. And there's nothing good that comes from having a relationship within that drama triangle. Ooh, I like that. MA says, you can't make someone love you by giving them more of what they already don't appreciate. Wow. I love that. Yeah. If that ain't the truth, for real, that is really well said. Yes. Truth seekers talking about attachment style therapy will give you knowledge, but it won't heal it, um, or them or anyone. Really, it's just knowledge is the first step. Uh, action follows. Hopefully, action will follow knowledge, and sustained action is where the magic happens. But yes, it can help to kind of give a person that validation of there's more going on here. And I think it helps too to see emotionally immature behavior for what it is. Once you're able to see that, it's a lot easier, I think, to get some distance and just to realize this did not start with me. This will not end with me. This is a problem. Most people, the vast majority of people out there, have a um, have some degree of boundaries, some understanding of boundaries and appropriate behavior by the first grade. So there's that expectation of if you're frustrated or angry, that's okay. It's okay to feel that way. We all feel that way. However, society dictates, and just kind of basic respect and dignity dictates that you've got to be able to self-soothe. So being frustrated and angry is fine, but it's not okay to take it out on other people. Again, we learned this in kindergarten, right? It's not okay to throw things, to spit, to hit, to kick, to scream, to have a level 10 meltdown, in the middle of the room because you were told no. And children that do tend to have these really significant behavioral issues, these are there's oppositional defiant disorder, and there's more often than not reactive attachment disorder. These are significant issues that are not fixed with just love. It's very specialized therapy. There's a whole behavior plan. There's often a whole treatment team involved. And that's just to give a child a fighting chance at making that shift to something that's more stable. But even then, it's it's a long process, years, if the needle has even a chance to move. So the result of that, when you see major behaviors, and these are what some of the signs of precursors of antisocial personality disorder, it tends to be seriously disruptive behavior in childhood. And that behavior starts to become more concrete as that person gets older. So you see a disregard and a disrespect for rules and societal norms. You see that level of entitlement. You see destruction of property. You see harm to others, especially animals, because kids don't have kind of bullies tend to pick on those that are weaker than them. So harm to younger children, smaller children, animals, these kinds of things. If the and that's the thing too. It's what's so tragic is even if uh, the quote unquote right therapy by the right therapists are being done, there's still a very solid chance that that child is always going to have um, difficulty, profound difficulty with relationships and be in and out of jail, and domestic violence and murder and all kinds of things are going to follow. Okay, Jack is saying Sable Minor. Oh, Sable says, Dana, darling, love the new artwork, backdrop and shelves. Thank you. Yes, artwork is a work in progress and it's getting there. Hopefully by next Tuesday, it'll look very different than it does now. But thank you. Huffle Mom says, yeah, it's not okay to have a level 10 meltdown because the teacher said it was time to put away the Legos. Right. And Carol says, oh my goodness, these adult temper tantrums sound all too familiar. Yes. Yeah. And there is so much to be said for how attachment theory plays into this. And uh, yeah. And then you start heaping on all just kinds of very deeply dysfunctional mindsets. And, I mean, yikes. Sable, oh, that was Sable's question. Do we know if this is Wednesday night's replacement chat? I will. So good question. I will be doing Wednesday's live stream. I'm probably only going to go for about an hour and a half though. But yes, if you're interested, when I go live, you can text the word Dana Live, all one word, to the number 22999, and you will get a notification of when I am or am not going live. So if I have to cancel at the last minute. Thanks, Chris. He says, you rock, Dana. Right. Carol says, yeah, I agree with that. If there's no solid track record of change, it's not change. I cannot base my life decisions on trying to judge someone's intentions. Absolutely. And the reality is, no matter how sincere someone's intentions are, we all have intentions. We all want. We all want. Most of us want some degree of change. We want to lose weight. We want to gain weight. We want to, I don't know, uh, change our appearance. People want to stop drinking. They want to stop using drugs. They want to, whatever it is, work out more. We all want. And at the end of the day, wanting isn't enough. And this is where sustained motivation comes into play, because even if that desire to change is really powerful, I mean, I know I've experienced it multiple times in my life. I think probably a lot of people have, especially around the beginning of a new month or a new year. There's that feeling of, yeah, new year, new me, right? There's this deep driving sense. People wouldn't buy all this exercise equipment or join gyms if they didn't have the intention of doing it. Where people, myself included, where this tends to fall apart, where good intentions tend to start crumbling, it's because there's not a solid, realistic, workable plan in place. And that's the difference. So it's easy to, and change tends to be a process. It oftentimes tends to be 2 steps forward, 2 steps backwards. And for other people, this can be exhausting because it's this continual stop, start kind of a thing. And this is another reason why, and it can be so difficult to see a person who maybe sincerely wants the change, but for whatever reason, they just can't seem to actually stay in that action phase. Um, it's tragic, but there does come a time where if somebody has some really deeply destructive behavior, especially if we're talking about abuse, um, to kind of get some distance with love from them of I can't have this in my life, you know? And you think about how difficult it is for a person to change when we're quote unquote just talking about a drug or just talking about alcohol. We all realize that it's very difficult just for a person to stop drinking or to stop using or abusing a substance. Um, but here's the thing too, it's very cut and dry. It's very clear. If you're an alcoholic, the one thing that you need to do is to stop drinking alcohol. And that's putting it mildly, right? Of course, it's not easy at all. It's definitely a process, and there's a lot around that. But at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Stop drinking alcohol. You can't have it in the house. You can't be around other people with it, at least not the first year. Not hang out in bars. You've got to do things differently to stay away from alcohol. The the behavior that needs to be changed is very, very clear. Alcohol. Okay, this is no bueno. It's profoundly 1,000 times more difficult when you're talking about abuse because it's not just one thing. And for a person with abusive behavior, the behavior is the result. The behavior is that result of this deeply dysfunctional mindset um, and all kinds of other things that go along with it. And so it's not just, um, oh, you need to stop hitting. It tends to be you need to stop manipulating and lying and denying and defending and blaming and shaming and cussing and threatening and intimidating and it's a lot. And um, it's a lot. So you're talking about a radical personality shift and mindset shift, and especially if there's already physical abuse in the process, or I would even say extreme emotional abuse or extreme abuse of any kind. Abuse escalates very quickly, and it can become violent and dangerous, and staying around hoping, um, if they are giving apologies, if they are periodically seeking help or whatever, the odds of them, that behavior escalating to the point of violence that either intentionally or even unintentionally um, permanently disables or kills you is high. It's high. So, yeah, making yourself a priority, making your physical safety and your emotional safety a priority is huge. We can't. I think so many of us wish we could. We see people hurting, and we see people. When you see this deeply dysfunctional behavior as a person's limitations, because that's really what it is, it's heartbreaking. And we want to be, there's a lot of us out there that want to be there, and we wish we could just hug a kind of this broken person. We wish we could hug them and all their pieces would just stick back together again, and it just doesn't work that way. And and that's heartbreaking. Gets Das says, I'm depressed. I've been depressed for a long time, trying to keep myself busy with things. But lately I can feel that I'm falling apart and I might explode anytime. What can I do to avoid breaking down? Okay. Are you, I guess, first and foremost, are you here in the United States? Let's go with that. Okay, I'm gonna start answering your question just because we're over on time a little bit here, but set me straight if I'm off base, okay? Um, at a minimum, here in the United States, I would encourage you, depending on how, if these feelings are um, kind of bordering along the lines of self harm, uh, to call a suicide hotline And at a minimum, if you're really feeling that you're in danger, a danger to yourself or even a danger to others, I would consider calling emergency services. So 911 here in the United States or non-emergency police and saying, I'm just really at a low point. I need some help and getting that help. Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks, Jack, for that clarification. He says, no, gets Joss is in India. Okay, so if you're not in the United States, there's quite a few support groups out there for starters. I have one, so Thrive After Abuse on Facebook. If you're interested, please consider joining the group, not the page. The group is private, or I should say closed. So it's you know, um, it's just more private. And speaking to other people who understand where you are, it can be just kind of getting that um, validation and being allowed to just be heard can be tremendously helpful. Um, there's a lot. There's just a lot. I know if I remember correctly, your situation, a lot of it had to do with family, and it was this kind of um, both literal and perceived sense of not being able to get away from that. So um, carving out as much alone time as you can, getting some distance um, is going to help tremendously. Taking up, I don't know how things are in your country or what's going on pandemic wise or any of that, but taking up long walks or running, something that'll get you out of the house and ideally being able to channel that energy into something positive and just kind of burning that off and then kind of planning, coming up with a plan. And I know if I remember correctly, I think you were in school, pandemic stuff hit, and then you had to go back home. um, if I'm way off base, please set me straight here, but kind of coming up with some sort of plan as to, okay, you need some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. Staying in this home environment is just not working. So, okay, he said, yeah, you're right. You're right with my situation. Um, journaling can help. Um, See, a lot of this stuff, journaling, exercise, doing all of these things, this will help to some degree to help you cope. The bigger issue is sort of like, the bigger issue is the family dynamic. And so there's always going to be a really large degree of anger and frustration and irritation because your boundaries are continually being crossed. So I feel on one level it's important to kind of work with where you are and what you have to work with, right? But on another level it kind of feels like unless that deeper issue, that family, unless you're able to get some distance and some boundaries in place with your family, which it sounds like the only way that's really going to happen is going to be with some physical distance. It sort of feels like any of the the techniques that I'm talking about, it feels like it's along the same lines as if you have a nail in your foot, you know, and we're like, okay, I can't, my foot's in pain. It's swollen. I can't sleep. It hurts to move. It's red. It's infected, all of this stuff. Like we could talk about, different ointment creams and you probably should elevate your foot and, kind of how to hop along and how to, to do all this. But at the end of the day, the issue is there's a nail in your foot. And it's the same thing with this kind of a family dynamic. So if they don't respect your boundaries, if it's nothing but chaos and, um, all of this, it's difficult because you're in an environment where they have all the power. It's their home. So brainstorming some ways that you can, I guess, first and foremost, realize that this situation is temporary. It is temporary. So then coming up with a way of how can we ensure that it can stay temporary, that it just doesn't go on indefinitely? What are some options that you have? And how can you start bringing peace into your life now, given these very extreme, intolerable situation? What can you do now? So getting out of the house, giving yourself a break, um, throughout the day. Um, and and again, a lot of it's going to just be based on how things are going pandemic wise in the country, and there's other cultural stuff that plays in. But oh, thank you. Eva says, I appreciate your support, solid through many years, a calm voice of reason. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm glad. I appreciate that. Let me scroll up here. I feel like I'm missing something in the chat. Um, so okay, okay. I'll have to touch base with the moderators in here. We'll recoup, but we're over we're over time, and I've got a million things to do today. But um, okay. So with that said, um, Jack, I'm going to be emailing you here shortly. So, okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us. These are Tuesday live streams. I normally try to do, Angie and I normally try to do them together. It was a last minute decision. Well, no, it wasn't. It was a decision yesterday to not do one today. I forgot to pass that along to you guys. This is why I am alone today. So, of course, as always, Angie is deeply missed, and we will resume next Tuesday. If I have it correct, we'll be over here again next week on my channel. So, if you want to subscribe to be notified whenever I go live, you can text the word Dana Live, all one word, to the number 22999. And with that said, just lots of love to you guys. You are not alone, you are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care.